Nothing ended. It just shifted. And the strange thing was, nothing insisted that it had. I had expected change to announce itself, a moment I could recognize, a reason I could explain, a quiet disruption in my mind that wouldn't let me ignore it. But there wasn't one. Not loudly, not clearly, not in a way that marked a beginning or an end. There was no visible transition, no emotional break, no dramatic difference. It was quieter than that. It was gradual. It was internal. It was steady. From the outside, everything looked the same. I still spoke when I needed to. I still answered when someone asked. I still moved through the day as usual. Nothing about the scene suggested anything had changed. And yet, something inside me had. Not suddenly, not forcefully, just quietly enough to exist. I noticed it in the absence of familiarity, the moment where things used to feel automatic, the pause where something once felt clear, the space where I once felt fully aligned, and this time I didn't. That was new. The shift didn't arrive as tension. It arrived as the absence of what used to be there. I wasn't reacting the same way anymore. I wasn't feeling the same certainty. I wasn't moving through things without noticing the difference, and nothing felt unstable. I was still present, still aware, still steady, but I wasn't experiencing everything the same way. Moments existed without the same weight. Conversations remained without the same depth. Familiarity stayed without the same connection, and nothing collapsed. I could move through an entire afternoon with everything appearing unchanged without feeling exactly as I used to. Nothing required explanation. It was more like a difference without resistance, as if something inside me had shifted slightly without needing to be corrected. And the more I noticed that, the more I realized something else. How much I had expected change to come with clarity. How often I assumed something had to break before it could be different. How I believed that difference needed a reason. But this wasn't about reasons. It was about perception, not strong enough to interrupt me, not clear enough to define, just steady enough to remain. I began to notice how subtle it was. A slight difference in how things felt. A quiet distance where there used to be closeness. A small shift in something I couldn't fully name, but nothing demanded attention. And that was the shift. Everything around me stayed the same, but the way I experienced it had softened. I paid attention to how quiet that felt, how stable it remained, how little urgency it created. If someone had asked whether anything had changed, I would have said no, and meant it honestly. That was the surprising part. I had always believed change would be obvious, that difference would feel disruptive, that shifts would announce themselves. But some changes do not reveal themselves. They simply happen. I noticed it in repetition. The same routines, the same conversations, the same quiet patterns. Everything recognizable, yet not identical. I didn't need a clear explanation. I didn't need a specific reason. I didn't need to define what had shifted. And nothing felt broken. That awareness changed something, because once you realize that something can change without ending, you stop looking for clear transitions. I began to see how often I had relied on clear moments. If something changed, I expected to notice it immediately. If something felt different, I expected to understand why. But this wasn't like that. The shift inside me didn't move toward clarity. It remained subtle, like something slightly adjusted without needing to be corrected, like a feeling that didn't fully repeat without needing to be replaced, like a familiarity that softened without disappearing. And the more I noticed that softness, the more I accepted it. There was no need to define it, no need to question it, no need to return things to how they felt before. It simply remained part of the experience. And in that steadiness, I found something unexpected. Not confusion, not resistance, not uncertainty, just awareness. An awareness that didn't need explanation. Everything continued as usual. Time moved forward. People spoke. The world kept its rhythm, and I moved within it while something quietly felt different. I noticed it in my reactions, in the space between moments, in the absence of what once felt certain. The difference didn't need attention. It didn't need to be fixed. It wasn't disruptive. The structure of everything stayed intact. The patterns continued. The ordinary details remained, but something inside me no longer felt exactly the same within it. Not because I resisted it, but because I noticed it. Even simple moments felt different. What once felt immediate now felt slightly delayed. What once felt complete now felt slightly altered. The familiarity shifted. I didn't need to understand it to recognize it. I just noticed that something had moved, and that awareness was subtle. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a realization. It was quiet, and because it was quiet, it felt stable. Sometimes I tried to find the moment where it had changed, but there wasn't one. Not hidden, not forgotten, just non-existent. I didn't explain it to anyone. There was nothing clear to describe, but I carried that quiet difference with me through the same routines and the same hours, aware that not all change announces itself. There was nothing to fix, no disruption to resolve, no clear beginning or end. The shift inside me was not a break. It was simply different. And different does not mean broken. It moved with me in small ways, in how I noticed, in how I paused, in how I experienced familiar things differently. I let that difference exist without trying to return it to what it was. The strange thing was how natural that felt. People still spoke the same way. My routine still held together. My life still moved forward. Nothing outward transformed. Nothing dramatic unfolded. And yet, something inside me had quietly shifted. Not loudly, not urgently, just steadily, as if something had changed without needing to end first, and the absence of an ending no longer felt incomplete. It felt continuous. Like something that didn't need a break to become different, like something that didn't need a reason to quietly move. And once I stopped looking for that reason, nothing felt unclear, because not everything needs to end to become something else. Nothing ended, it just shifted.